Now that he's no longer part of the British government, Jacob Rees-Mogg has come out to reveal the truth about the lockdown days and policies, as well as Rishi Sunak's cabinet. Okay, Jacob Rees-Mogg is here to expose the British establishment and their dirty tactics. Now, remember the lockdown days, 2020, 2021. Now, we've been always objective. You blame the actual weak and feeble politicians, as well as the dirty tactics of the establishment, the civil service, and the state in general. So, Boris Johnson was Prime Minister. He has to take responsibility. The globalists behind the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization, all these guys who kept pushing their own agenda, they have to take the blame as well. But this is about Jacob Rees-Mogg coming out. Of course, he's friends and ally to Boris Johnson. He's got his bias, but he came out to reveal the truth about the civil service in Downing Street in Whitehall when they tried to do peer pressure to push Boris Johnson into doing lockdown policies and face nappies and everything else. So this is Jacob Rees-Mogg saying that Boris Johnson came under outrageous pressure from civil servants over masks and lockdowns, and civil servants decided to use sinister tactics to pressure the Prime Minister that we had at the time. It makes you then think, who did we elect? Did we elect Boris Johnson as an MP to get into Parliament, to get a majority and become Prime Minister and form government? Or did we elect the civil servants, the faceless bureaucrats? Why do they have so much power? And why are our politicians like Boris Johnson so weak that they completely surrender to the civil service? This is the main question. Now, Jacob Rees-Mogg came out to say that other countries locked down and enforced much more rigorously than we did. And the pressure on the Prime Minister at the time was to lock down more fiercely. You know, the perfect example was Italy was the first country to go down. So they used that against Boris Johnson, the civil service. They also showed Boris, the civil servants, they showed him all these pictures of other world leaders wearing masks, and one of Boris not wearing a mask, to try to nudge the Prime Minister into wearing a mask. Jacob Rees-Mogg says that I think that there was surprisingly little reporting on this, but it's outrageous that officials thought that it was their job to place a reminder with the Prime Minister who had a democratic mandate. I mean, if that were the case, and I'm not surprised if that would be the case, it is outrageous. Well, who are they to tell an actual democratically elected member of parliament and politician to do anything? They are supposed to be following the orders from the ministers and prime ministers. They're not supposed to be setting any agenda or policies. We say that, but of course we're not naive. We know unfortunately that's not the case. But they have to tell the truth. Jacob Rees-Mogg is now coming to talk about Jeremy Hunt, he's talking about Rishi Sunak, and is now the new rebel on the backbenches of the Tory party. And we say that at the same time we are realistic. We know that the Tory party is currently gone. There's no hope. So we're not really saying it to support the Tory movement. It doesn't really work anymore. But it is still true when Jacob Rees-Mogg says about Jeremy Hunt that taxation needs to come down. That must be a priority for Conservatives. We need to get expenditure under control and allow people to keep their own money. And planning reform is something that we needed to have been more forthright about. He also says about Rishi Sunak's government in general and his leadership that, as I understand it, the government is pushing ahead with the retained EU law bill. And I think this is tremendously important. GB News had an excellent interview recently with a very distinguished lawyer who said that he could do it by himself in a year and that a law firm could do it in a month. Now, for those who remember, a few days ago, we actually reported on that interview about the lawyer who said this, that, it seems like the British government and our elected ministers and MPs, politicians that we have been quite weak on challenging the civil service establishment, the state, or as Dominic Cummings would call them the deep state, the actual faceless bureaucrats at the top of the civil service. So this is the issue. We can get it done, but it seems like people like Rishi Sunak are so weak. Or maybe, again, this is the difference between the thin line between complacency and complicity, because they don't seem to have the urgency to sort out the actual Brexit, which is getting rid of the EU laws that are still tied to them. And we have to make this country independent. But there's so much to talk about on this issue, but this is really about the relationship between the state and the government. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. I'm Tousi, and we are the media.